Think of any RPG ever. I mean it. Think of literally any RPG you've ever played. Whether it be Final Fantasy VII, Oblivion, Morrowind, Skyrim, any Pokemon game, Earthbound, Fire Emblem, or any other obscure RPG practically ever.
Bruh.
Either directly or indirectly, all those games have been inspired by one series. And that would be the Dragon Quest series. Maybe one day, but not today. No, today we're talking about the very first Dragon Quest, or Dragon Warrior if you're North American. No, but for real though, this is the most influential RPG series pretty much out there, with the exception of Ultima and Wizardry, because those two series inspired this series, so, you know. And if you want to get real technical with it, then D&D, you know, but that's like cheating. Yeah, so this game is the very first JRPG as we know them today. Now some people will say, well, no, it's not the first JRPG because there were Japanese role-playing games before this, even though they weren't very popular. I disagree, because I'm not just classifying JRPG as a role-playing game that is from Japan. So what am I classifying as a JRPG? Well, the term has kind of changed throughout the years, but specifically for this time period that I'm talking about, a JRPG is essentially this: an attempt to take the complex mechanics of a Western RPG and make it more accessible to a general audience. That's basically what it is, you know, really just watered down version of like the whole explanation of like the philosophy behind a JRPG and all yada yada yada. Now, in making something more accessible, you're gonna make it less complex, obviously, and this game is definitely an example of that, but we'll give it some slack because the very first. It attempts to take something like this and simplify it to something like this. Yeah, crazy. Since we're talking about the UI, let's just jump right into the menus. So the menus are really funny because they're from a bygone era that you look at them now and you go, half of that stuff is redundant, or more than half of that stuff is redundant actually, but for the time it was like, oh wow, they really like made it real accessible to a general audience. When, again, like nowadays, people just go, yeah, you just press the A button and you get all those functions. So first we got the talk command, which is obviously for talking, that's self-explanatory. Then we got the status, which is, you know, to check your stats, which is, again, not that antiquated of a concept, still. Next we got stairs. Next we got the stairs command. And, oh boy. It's baffling because I don't think there's any other game that I've ever played or ever seen or know of that has a stairs command for going up and down stairs, because pretty much everybody who's ever played a game ever knows that all you need to do is walk into the stairs tile and then you'll go up or down. It's really funny to think that somebody thought we need a command for this function instead of just moving into the thing. And the funny thing is there's no situation where you would want to walk over a set of stairs and not go up or down them. So completely just laughable. Next we have the search command, which I think is basically useless because the command next to it is take, and you can just circumvent the search command and just use the take command and you still get the item. It's not like you have to search and then take it, which a lot of people think you do have to do that, but you don't. You can just go directly to the take command and you get the thing. So search is almost as useless as stairs in this situation. I don't think there's any situation in the game where you need to search for something and then take it. I think you can just always take the thing first. Even Erdrick's amulet, which is like hidden, if you know where it is, you can just use the take command, I'm pretty sure. The door command is kind of like, again, nowadays you would just use the A button, but I mean I think it's less useless than the stairs command, but you can just go directly into your item menu and hit one of the keys, and then the door will open, so it's kind of redundant. Speaking of the item, you got the item command, so see your items. Basic stuff. And then finally we have the spells, which obviously you need, so yeah, very interesting command prompts here. It's real funny. Alright, let's get into the amazing story, ladies and gentlemen. Since it's the very first JRPG, I expect the story to be very basic. So basically there's this place called Alefgard, and a long time ago this hero called Erdrick defeated evil and everybody was happy and loved him. He used the ball of light to do this. That was a long time ago. He's long dead. Now in the current year, A new evil has arose, the Dragon Lord. He comes and he steals the ball of light from the king, which is bad because then all the monsters come back and it's a real bad time. But then luckily, you, the hero, the descendant of Erdrick, shows up and is commanded by the king to go forth and stop the evil. And then you do that. You talk to one of the guards and you find out that about 6 months ago, the princess was stolen by the Dragon Lord as well. The reason why the king doesn't tell you this directly is because the thought of it causes him so much distress that he doesn't talk about it. So we get a side quest. Very, very basic story. Very basic. Very Mario-esque, which is fine because it's the very first JRPG. I'm not expecting a grand narrative, but some people are, and some people will be very much turned off by the fact that it's this simple. So something to consider, I guess. It's an NES RPG though. I don't know what else would you be expecting when coming into this array. I don't know. Now the manual goes into a lot more detail and takes a lot of liberties. For example, it does get into how the Dragon Lord found the dragons, which is pretty cool, but they get major details very, very wrong. So in this version, in the version that's in the manual, Erdrick doesn't show up to defeat an unknown evil in the past. He shows up after the Dragon Lord already steals the ball of light, which is completely wrong, because if you know the lore, you would know that Erdrick fights Zoma, not the Dragon Lord. Not only that, but the game still states that he is viewed as like a legendary hero, but according to the manual, what he does, he goes out to try to stop the Dragon Lord, but he never succeeds. He just like tries real hard, and he doesn't succeed. And then the player is still stated to be Erdrick's descendant. I don't know about you guys, but descendant, like, I wouldn't call my son my descendant. It would be a stretch to call my grandson my descendant. You know, like descendant, that carries like some weight to it. So how much time passed between Erdrick showing up and the player showing up? It has to be like a very long time. So there's no way this is the same king that got the light orb stolen from, right? It's very weird. And when I was first reading this, I did like a double take. For like a split second, I thought, is this like the original Japanese story? Like, but I thought, no, there's no way, because in game, it's not like this at all. This is just a thing from the manual. Very weird. Not only that, but at the very end, it basically says like, yeah, the hero defeats the Dragon Lord, and then it starts to tell the intro to Dragon Quest II. Very strange. Very, very strange. Check it out if you have a chance. It's an interesting read, to say the least. Very weird. You can see Charlotte Castle from Tantegel Castle right at the start of the game, which is a really, really, really cool moment. If you are familiar with my Pokemon reviews, you probably know that I've mentioned that Pokemon kind of imitates this moment, where you go on a grand adventure and eventually you need to come back to your home and then go to an area that's very close to where your home is, but you couldn't previously go without all the trinkets. Similar thing happens here. You're going to need the Silver Harp, which will eventually get you the Rain Staff, which in conjunction with the Sunstone will get you the Rainbow Drop. And then once you have the Rainbow Drop, you can go to a very specific place and make the Rainbow Bridge, just as Erdrick did a millennia ago. And once you do that, you can actually go into Charlotte Castle and defeat evil. Now this is an open world game, if you can kind of call it that, which I'm going to for the sake of this review. This is an open world game. And you can go pretty much anywhere you want with the exception of Charlotte Castle, but you can go pretty much anywhere else you want. The only thing that's impeding you from actually going to those places are the enemies there that will kill you very quickly if you're not high enough level. The locations are as follows in no particular order. We got Breckenary, which is the town right next to Tantegel Castle, which is where you start off. We got Garenham, which is a town far off in the distance. We got the town of Cole, which I believe there's a bathhouse there, which you will get the fairy flute there, and also you can get a, in the Japanese version, you can get smothered by a lady's breasts there, which was obviously censored for the North American release. And I think in the North American release, she says something about not being able to sell you tomatoes, something weird like that. There's actually a recurring gag in the Japanese versions, ladies offering you chest pleasures, but then it turning out to actually, oh, it's not. You thought that's what it was, but it was actually something else. But I believe for this first game, it actually just straight up is you get breasts in your face. And I think the same thing happens in the Game Boy remake, and I don't remember if it's censored in North America or not. Yeah, the Japanese call it puff puff. Apparently, that's the onomatopoeia that the breasts make. Not only that, but in the Game Boy version, if you take the princess to an inn after saving her, the person at the front desk will remark that we were up late, which is implying that we were banging the princess. Yeah, the Japanese, man, they're pretty base. We got Remoldar, which is like the closest point to where you need to make the Rainbow Bridge, so you're gonna be returning there not frequently, but at least it's gonna be like the last town you visit before you go on to fight the bad guy. So Remoldar, I believe you also get magical keys from there, but you gotta go you gotta do a little. You gotta walk around the town to find them. We got Hawk's Nest, which is very notable for being a destroyed town, which is talked about by a few NPCs throughout. You get, some people say like, oh, I wonder if it's still there. Eventually you go there and it's still there technically, but it's destroyed and full with monsters. This is a really cool moment, and even though I knew that there was a town that was destroyed the first time I played, it still caught me off guard because the overworld graphic is just a normal town. And you're kind of trained to see that and think, oh, sanctuary. But then you go in there and it's not sanctuary, it's death, especially if you're not high enough level, especially in this version of the game. So that's definitely the coolest town in the entire game is Hawk's Nest. Hawkinson's from Stranger Things? Actually, I almost forgot about Cantlin. I can't believe I almost forgot about Cantlin because there's a giant golem outside of Cantlin, which is really cool. It's also the largest town in the entire game, and there's a lot of different stuff there. It's not much more useful than any other town, but it's pretty cool because it's got a wall surrounding it and a giant golem, which is pretty cool. Is also a mini boss. We'll get to those later. But all in all, the towns are pretty basic. There's not much to say about them. Again, Hawkix, Nix, and Cantlin are probably the best ones. That was the towns. Now let's talk about the caves. Caves are pretty interesting. The game creators attempted to, not exactly, but kind of mimic a dungeon crawler in the sense that your view of your surroundings is very limited, and they wanted to kind of mimic that experience with having the caves be completely dark. You can expand your field of view, but it's not that much better. It's not like Flash from Pokemon where you do it and the whole cave gets illuminated. There's not much to say about the caves because there's not a whole lot of them, and they're pretty short. They're pretty straightforward. If you fumble around there long enough, you're gonna find your way, and it's not gonna take you that long. One interesting thing though, there's a spell that repels enemies in the overworld. And I believe the spell doesn't actually work in caves, because when I'm in the overworld, it works. And then I go into a cave, and then I encounter an enemy, and I think, oh, maybe transitioning from the overworld to a cave nullifies the spell. Maybe it's like an oversight. So I recast the spell, right? But then I still encounter enemies. So I think it just doesn't work in caves, which is pretty interesting, because, caves are supposed to be dangerous. So having a spell that just nullifies encounters is kind of like, So, it not working in caves is interesting, but I don't know if that was intentional or not. Maybe it was, I'm not sure. Alright, let's get into my favorite part of any RPG I've ever played, the combat. Now, like I mentioned before, JRPGs are attempts to make Western RPGs more accessible to a general audience, and the unfortunate side effect of this is that a lot of mechanics are very simplified, and the one that is the most simplified, unfortunately, for this one is combat. So, again, like I mentioned before, you can punch him in the face, or you can use a magical spell to punch him in the face. You have two spells that deal damage. You have the Hurt spell and the Hurt More spell. And that's it. Now, it's not the only spells you can use in combat. You can also put the enemy to sleep. You can also use the Stop spell to stop the enemy's spells. I'm pretty sure that is the extent of the fighting mechanics in this RPG. I can understand what I'm playing to look beyond the simplicity, but it's still kind of like, The Stop spell, however, completely wrecks any enemy that knows any magic, because you cast that spell on them and they are unable to use any magic for the remainder of battle. But yeah, that's pretty much it. There's no buffs, there's no debuffs, except if you want to call sleeping and not being able to use magic as debuffs. I guess those are the debuffs. But there's no buffs, there's no real like elemental kind of rock, paper, scissors-y thing going on here either. Again, it's very, very simple. Now, there is a few pieces of equipment throughout the game. You don't actually need to worry about equipping equipment, because as soon as you buy it, you auto-equip it. And then when you buy new equipment, the vendor will offer you to buy the equipment you have already. And you can't refuse his offer, so it's, again, very streamlined, very simple, very accessible. A little too accessible in this case, though. It's almost brain dead. It's just, okay, this one's more expensive than the last thing I got. It's better, so there you go. It makes things just a little bit too simple for my liking. You don't have to think about it at all, basically. The only thing you have to think about is, should I get the new armor, or should I wait until the point where I can get the end game armor? Alright, let's talk a little bit about the enemies. First of all, we got our slimes, we got our red slimes, and we got our metallic slimes, or metal slimes. These are the most basic enemy in the entire game, with the exception of the metal slime. Red and blue slimes only differentiate themselves by the amount of XP you get, and I think the red ones give more gold, if I remember correctly. They are the most basic enemy in the entire game, though. We'll talk about the metal slime in a bit. Next we have the Drakies, the Drakies. We got the normal Draki, we got the Magi or Magi Draki, and we got the Drakima. These are little bat things that you can encounter in the world. They're not that annoying. The magical one can hit you with a hurt spell, which if you're low enough level will put you in a dangerous situation. We also got some ghosts. We got a few of these ghost buddies. I really like. They look pretty cute. I like them a lot. We got scorpions as well, which can be pretty dangerous if you encounter them too quickly, which is something that happened to me. So beware. They are deceptively powerful if you're low enough level. Those rogue scorpions, man, you gotta watch out for those rogue scorpions. We got some weird enemies. We got the Drolls. You got the Droll and the Droll Magi, Droll Magi. I don't know what these things are supposed to be at all. I don't know. They're interesting. They're clearly like a bug thing, I guess. And then we got their cousins, the Druins. We got the normal Druin and the Druin Lord. Not that memorable of enemies. Both these sets of enemies can only be found in caves. So interesting that there's enemies that you can only find in caves, and I like how they're like weird creatures like these. I'm perplexed by them though. They're really strange. Next we got skeletons. We got a lot of skeletons. We got a big variety here. They're all pretty much scary when you first encounter them. We got the normal skeleton who's just kind of sitting there, but he's a strong boy. Don't underestimate the skeleton. We got the Wraith Knight. Then we just got the Wraith, which, not being very creative with the names. And then we got the Shadow Knight, which is literally just a silhouette, which is probably the worst looking one out of the bunch. He's also the one you should probably avoid the most, because for whatever reason, he's pretty dangerous, but doesn't yield enough XP to like warrant you facing him. So just whenever you see a Wraith Knight, or no, what are they called? Whenever you see a Shadow Knight, just run away. It's not worth it. It's at no point in the game is it worth fighting these guys. Next we got wolves, which are, you know, interesting. They're like wolf men, but they're just called wolves. We got the wolf, very original. We got the wolf lord, and then we got the werewolf. Yeah, wolf lords at one point will be pretty scary, but when you encounter the werewolf, at least in my situation, you're already at a high enough level where they're not going to be that much threatening, so you can dispatch with them pretty quickly. We got a variety of cliff racers here. The Star Wyvern can heal itself, so when you first encounter it, the first thing you want to do is use Stop Spell so it doesn't do that, because otherwise it's going to be punching in the face multiple times and nothing's going to be happening because it's going to be heal mooring itself, and you're going to be there forever, so Stop Spell immediately. We got the Knights, which are big, bulky guys. Whenever you encounter them, it's pretty much like scary. Especially the armored knights towards the end. I mean, they're the highest one, obviously, and they look the coolest, but you don't really want to encounter them at that point because you're most likely on your way to the last battle. We got 3 dragons. We got the green, the blue, and the red. They're dragons. They're scary because, you know, dragons. I don't really need to elaborate much. They're dragons. I will say you can grind green dragons at a certain point pretty easily, which is nice. They give not that much more XP than the Shadow Knight, and they have just a little bit more health, but you might think like, oh, I'll just fight the Shadow Knight. Nah, just skip the Shadow Knight and fight the green dragon. Green dragon's good for XP. We got the gold man that doesn't give a whole lot of XP, but gives a lot of gold. But in this game, you're pretty much never like in need of gold, pretty much. But if you ever are, just fight the gold man. He gives a lot of gold, which is nice. And then finally, we have the magicians. We have the magician, we have the warlock, and we have the wizard. Again, stop spell works really good on these boys. They're essentially completely immobilized. You can just punch them in the face repeatedly, and they're just sitting there trying to hurt more you, and they just can't. Yeah, so one thing that I really like is that all these enemies, even though they are essentially the same sprite, they're not just 3 colors, although a lot of them are just 3 colors, but not all the time. Sometimes they flip the sprite around, which I know a big whoop, but, you know, it's an NES game, so you get what you get. Not only that, but they also sometimes have different accessories, like the magician is just a dude in robes just standing there, but the wizard has like a staff thing, which, and then again, nice little detail. It's not much, but not a lot of games of this era did stuff like that, so I appreciate it. This game is notorious, absolutely notorious for it's crazy. Now I've heard, and I'm sure many of you have heard as well, of the horror stories of this game, that you have to grind a whole bunch. You don't know until you actually play it, because it's not the amount of grinding you need to do that is like soul crushing. It's just how long it takes. It just takes forever. Enemies in this game don't give nearly enough XP to warrant them existing. I mentioned the metal slimes earlier, and if you're familiar with the Dragon Quest series, you're probably thinking, oh well, metal slimes will make the grinding process not that bad, right? Yeah, you would think that, but no, that's not the case at all. In this game, the metal slime only gives 115 XP, and I believe the red dragon gives like 106 XP, something like that. The red dragon is the hardest enemy in the entire game, by the way, in terms of like raw stats. Yeah, and you know what? It's actually easier to grind off of red dragons than metal slimes, because you can actually consistently find the red dragons and they'll stay for more than 2 turns. Yeah. And again, you might be thinking, oh, 115 XP, that's a lot, right? It is if you're like level 2. Here's a chart of the XP requirements for this game. The numbers themselves aren't the thing that's that outrageous. It's the amount of XP that enemies will give. The amount of XP you get for enemies later on in the game don't properly scale with the XP requirements for levels. Again, and the thing is, it's not even like intuitive either. I mentioned the Shadow Knights. I tried to grind off Shadow Knights when I got to Hawkins or whatever the hell the town's called. I was trying to grind off of them before I actually went into the town, and it just drained my resources so quickly fighting those guys. And eventually I just got fed up of how long the process was taking, and I moved on to Cantlin, and outside of Cantlin are green dragons, and I found grinding the green dragons just as hard as fighting the Shadow Knights. And again, like I mentioned before, the green dragons give you more XP. It's not that much more XP. If the risk is basically the same amount of risk from fighting the green dragons and the Shadow Knights, I might as well fight the green dragons. But you gotta like go further into the world to get to that point. So again, you would think, oh, I'm gonna grind right outside the place I need to go next to be able to be high enough level to go and do the thing I need to do there. But that's not the case. You need to go to a completely different place and do it. Now maybe I wasn't doing it in the most efficient way possible. I don't know what the most efficient way possible is. But intuitively you would think, oh, I'll just, as I go along, I'll grind. Not, I'll get to this place I need to go, and then I'll go to a completely different place, and then double back. You would think you would have an easier time, and it would be more cost effective to just fight the shadow skeletons before moving on to the green dragons. But nah. Now this is where I need to mention the Game Boy version, because that was the first version I played, and the Game Boy version essentially fixes this problem. It gives enemies give more XP. Here they are on screen. This is the difference. Now it might not seem like much of a difference, but when you have to do a whole bunch of grinding, it's a big difference. Alright, let's talk about the bosses. The first one, kind of, but not really, is the green dragon that's guarding the princess. Now again, the green dragon's a normal enemy, so this is kind of like a pseudo-boss, but it is a mandatory encounter, and I think the idea was that you encounter it way earlier than you would encounter a green dragon enemy. So again, this is why I'm calling it a pseudo-boss. I have seen videos online of people beating this thing at like level 7, which again requires like a lot of luck, but it is possible. It puts your growth into scale, you know, because like, oh, this enemy which was very hard to defeat now, or was very hard to defeat previously, is now very easy to defeat. Next pseudo boss would be the Axe Knight, which is guarding Erdrick's armor. This one's pretty hard. Some people recommend you grind this enemy because every time you step on the tile, you encounter him. It's not worth it. Again, green dragon. Now the next one is actually, I think, classified as a mini boss by a few people. It's the golem. You need the fairy flute in order to put the golem to sleep, or wake him up. No, he's put him to sleep. Win the battle, because he's pretty hard unless you want to spend even more time grinding, which you shouldn't do. It's a pretty cool encounter. It's the only time you'll ever encounter this enemy, so again, I think that's why people call him a mini boss. But again, he doesn't have like a large enough health pool to be classified as a full-fledged boss, I don't think. Again, there's not much I can really comment on here. The battles in this game are very simple. It's just I punch you and then I heal before I'm in the range of you punching me once and then me dying. So, and then the final boss is the Dragon Lord himself. He has 2 phases. The first phase is a complete joke. I think I beat him in like 3 turns. The first phase, it's a joke. It's basically meant to make you go, oh, that was really quickly, and then he transforms into his true form, the purple dragon thing, which is the most complex sprite in the entire game, which is pretty cool. This boss fight consists of you punching him and then healing before you fall below half health. And that's pretty much it. Unfortunately, he isn't completely immune to the hurt spell, but he is. I think it's like 1 in 16 chance he's actually going to get hurt by your hurt spell. That goes for the hurt more spell as well. So the 2 damage spells in the only 2 damage spells in the entire game are completely useless against the final boss. Also, you can't put him to sleep, and I don't think you can stop spell him either. So this fight is literally just punch him and heal yourself. That's kind of lame, dude. Alright, I always forget to talk about this in reviews, and I always try to remember, but I always forget. This time I wrote it down. The music. Now, the music, it's okay. We got the main theme, which is really good, which is like consistent throughout the whole series, so, you know, iconic. The overall theme is pretty... It's like a mix of somber and adventure, which I like a lot. It can get kind of annoying because every time you take a step, you usually fight an encounter, and the song will reset, so you're going to be hearing the initial part of the song a lot, which it kind of gets old after a while, you know? The cave theme is kind of mysterious. I do like how if you go deeper into the cave, the pitch gets lower and lower, and so does the tempo, which is a nice little detail. I like the castle theme. It's not necessarily like royally sounding, but I guess it fits the situation. The most important theme, the battle music. Now, Dragon Quest, the rest of the series has some badass, just straight up badass songs, like Dragon Quest II. Dragon Quest III. Dragon Quest IV. Dragon Quest VIII's pretty good as well. But this theme is just It's just not that, it doesn't really convey a battle, really, does it? Not really. I kind of like the orchestral version, but it's still just it's almost one note. The boss theme is also pretty lackluster. I mean, I guess it's fine, but it doesn't really pump me up to fight a dragon. It's just kind of like, okay. Sugiyama has some really good work in the rest of the series. This first entry, though, not his strongest work, not by a long shot. So you're all familiar with Final Fantasy, which is a contemporary to Dragon Quest. Now, you might be wondering, well, if Dragon Quest is like the biggest RPG in Japan, why haven't I heard of it? Or why isn't it more popular? Well, if you know Final Fantasy 1, you probably recognize that this game is more primitive than that game even, which is saying a lot. The thing is that we got this game in America after we got the first Final Fantasy. And again, we already got the first Final Fantasy, which is a contemporary with the third Dragon Quest, not the first one. It's way more comparable to compare those two than to compare Dragon Quest 1 and Final Fantasy 1. So, you know, we're pretty much getting an outdated product right from the get-go. The timing was just completely off. And then we didn't get any Super Nintendo games. We did get 7 after Final Fantasy 7 came out. And if you look at Final Fantasy 7 and Dragon Quest 7, you'll go, oh, I see why nobody would care. Also, it's a late PlayStation 1 release. So, you know, that's pretty much it. There's a few more things I could have got into, but I mean, you got the gist. You got the gist. Is this game worth playing? Hell no. Skip this version of the game. Throw it in the trash. Throw it in the trash with, I don't remember, who did I push over here in my Pokemon review? I don't remember. Just go with Jasmine. Those people where I pushed over there. Yeah, push this version of the game and pick up the Game Boy version. That version fixes a lot of the problems, and it's generally a good time. So, yeah, that's basically it. Thank you all for watching. Hope you all enjoyed. Leave a comment after the premiere. Hi, are you people watching? I got a lot of new subscribers. Are you actually watching my videos? I appreciate it if you are. If you got to the end, applaud yourselves. You guys are freaking amazing. I appreciate it. Next time we go into Dragon Quest, I guess it's going to be Dragon Quest 2. Am I going to play the original version or am I going to play the Game Boy version? I'm still not sure. I didn't even really like the Game Boy version that much. Spoilers, so I don't know how I'm going to bear playing the original version, but we'll get there when we get there. It's still, I'm going to do that in a few years, I think, because I've been playing a lot of RPGs lately, so I'll put that on the back burner. Anyways, peace out. Leave a comment. Peace out. Again, that freaking Dragon Quest 4 theme is amazing. Let's get this out of the way because it's late and I don't want to get this done. How should I do this? Yeah, so I'm gonna do it. Just gotta go for it so you can get the actually. Yeah. Okay. It's not that late, but this is. Wish I would have recorded it earlier. Either directly or indirectly, all those games have been inspired by one series. The Ultima series. I had a wizardry joke. Oh, I thought of it a couple of days ago. I don't remember what it was. It was really good too. I don't remember the setup. All I remember is that I'm like, oh, maybe I should check out wizardry instead. And then like I sit down at the computer and I look up wizardry and just look at the screen for like 2 seconds. I go, well, fuck that, and then go to the. I don't remember what the setup was though. That kind of sucks. Well, this will be in the bloopers, I guess. And we had last but not least, we have Hawkness, Hawkinson, Hawka Chameleon, Hawksness. That's actually not as hard as to say as I thought it would be. We got Hawksness. There you go.
So,
The video's premiering right now.
Raven Rock was a colony established over the course of the Blood Moon expansion.
I'm missing the premiere for you guys.
Since then, the
I watched most of it.
and the island was
Shut up, Patricia. I'm recording a video.
The only reason I can imagine that House Redoran would not look at an island close.
There it is, guys.
Skyrim is valuable is that they have
Morrowind for life.
Bruh.